Hello. If you've been here at all this week, that recording has started is our official workshop kickoff phrase. I'm Megan. I do marketing here at Chartboost. I see a lot of familiar faces that have already been here this week, which is awesome, and some new ones. Thanks for joining us at the Dev House today. We have another workshop this afternoon. We have workshops tomorrow, fireside chat with the Chief Product Officer of MiniClip. So check the schedule. And please know that you're welcome back. Glad to see you've grabbed some lunch, some coffee, make yourself at home. I am very excited for this session today. You may have noticed that Chartboost rolled out Playable Ads last week. We're super excited about it, and we're excited to share more about what that means, how that impacts your games, and some best practices you can take away with that. We have some of the key folks from our product team that are going to share more about that today. And we'll start with our VP of Product, Deepak Thakral, who is going to take the floor and kick this off. So let's welcome Deepak. Woo!
Thank you, Megan. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having fun at GDC. So 2017 marks a special year. It's the 10-year anniversary of the launch of the iPhone. When Steve Jobs kicked it off in 2007, right, Apple unleashed a new era where our phones went from being passive, listening and talking devices to being a personal extension of ourselves and our personality, right? We're much more fun-filled, engaging experience, whether it's for work or for leisure. It also spawned off a entirely new industry of mobile gaming, where mobile gamers and developers kind of took all these features, gestures, swipes, pinch, zoom, as well as the accelerometer to make games into a much more fun-filled, rewarding experience. And consumers went in droves, right, to answer the age-old dilemma, I'm bored, right? And so games provided this perfect opportunity. Now, as games have evolved, so have mobile ads, because they are the lifeblood of how gaming developers monetize, right? And we've seen at Chartboost, we've had a rich, long history of working very closely within the mobile gaming ecosystem to understand what developers' needs are, how can we monetize and make money for them via ads. And we were one of the first few ones to innovate and take from rather than just going this simple banner way, we launched interstitial ads, and then we went and launched video and rewarded video. But at the same time, when we looked inwards, we said, look, there's something that's missing. The fun and the interactive element that's so much present in games, how can we make that in ads? Because ads today are still much more passive. You view them, you click on them, you install them, but how can we make ads more fun, right? So we here at Chartboost are on a mission. We want to make ads more fun. And what I'm going to do is walk you through, along with my colleagues today, Prashant and Jason, we're going to get together and walk you through a more interactive experience for ads with playable ads, right? And at the end of it, we want to make this session more interactive as well. So we're going to wrap up in the next 30 minutes, but then we'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes for each of you in the audience to have a chance to go to the wall of iPads we have here, where we have live playables. And we have the entire team that's been working hard on these playable ads to be here in the audience and to help you answer any questions you may have or try out these games and give us your feedback. Okay. With that, let's jump into it. So what's the agenda? I want to talk about three things today. Why do interactive ads matter, right? Second, what are these playable ads? And we'll give plenty of examples of how we've gone about it. And a question that you might have in the audience, are these ads effective? How are they different? So we'll answer with a lot of data points, both from the industry and from our own first-party data, of why these playable ads are much more effective. Third, we'll have some design best practices, and Prashant and Jason are going to come up to the stage and give you some case studies and storyboarding examples of a few games and what goes into the life of making a playable ad. So first of all, think about how mobile gaming has evolved from the simple buttons and sticks. And if you remember the first launch of Angry Birds, as shortly after the launch of the app stores, we've now evolved where we started to see like FIFA and EA come up with like a lot more action-based games. And now it's evolved to where like you think about Game of War or Clash Royale. These games are increasingly very sophisticated in terms of their UX, in terms of their game design, in terms of the communities they have built, right? They almost have like cult-like followings. And so gaming has come a long way. And we also see the advent of HTML5 games. So we see social media take to it in a big way because as Apple and Google have launched their platforms and kind of create these walled gardens, it's kind of left social media giants like Facebook and WeChat thinking, how do we kind of make sure that we are in the gaming ecosystem, right? And so what we see is that um, Messenger app has their concept of instant games, right? Where you can play games between each other, and these are all based on HTML5. Similarly, WeChat in Asia has been going big with HTML5 games as well, and they are building their own gaming ecosystem within Tencent. So we are seeing like HTML5 technology is evolving and kind of having a center place to play inside mobile games. So what does this really mean for us? In the ads industry as well, ads have kind of tracked accordingly, and we've gone from like simple banner placements to having full screen interstitials. Chartboost was one of the first to launch these interstitial ads. And then as the world evolved into like watching videos and giving you kind of a sneak preview of what's involved in the game, we were right there and providing an opt-in mechanism for gamers who wanted to earn virtual currency, watch and play a game, learn more about it. And what we saw was that it increased the install rates, but it also increased retention. But we still felt like, hey, these are still passive. You're watching or you're seeing something, but how can we make these games a lot more interactive? How can we make these ads more interactive and in line with what's happening with mobile games? Um, so then it also kind of reflects on kind of the classic marketing funnel, right? And the challenges we see. In generally in the industry, what you see is it goes from awareness to interest to desire to action, right? So the analogy in mobile is that you look at an interstitial ad for Angry Birds, you say, hey, that's interesting, or you watch a video, you click on it, it takes you to the App Store, you learn more about the ratings, you learn more about the reviews and what the game is about, and you say, hey, that's interesting, I want to install it, and that's the action. But there's a challenge, right? And what we've seen is that mobile user acquisition has become increasingly sophisticated. And it's not just about the install event, it's about the post install events. How much retention is there? How often do they come back? What kind of in app purchases that they make? So the classic marketing funnel has evolved for mobile ads. And what we see today is that it reflects much more of what we call as it's not just about exposure, which is viewing an ad, watching a video, it's about the interactivity element. And we'll explain to you why this interactivity drives not just conversion, but higher retention. Because when you're playing with a game, you're immersed inside this like mini game, you tend to not only drive a higher install, but you tend to drive a higher quality install. And we'll show with data why the users come back to this game more and more, and they tend to be highly engaged, high quality installs for our advertisers. So, is there evidence which shows that consumers find these interactive ads much more engaging? Absolutely yes, right? And what you see here is that over half of the millennial users find interactive ads much more engaging than interstitials. They find them to be a lot more fun, appealing, engaging, and creative, and that just drives not only just viewing the ad but also higher purchase probability compared to regular interstitials. So there's overwhelming industry evidence as well that shows that these ads are here to stay, and they will work not just for gaming but also for like non-gaming and like for brands as well, right? So what does this mean, right, for us? So we really believe that interactive ads are the next big format, and they're here to stay. And what we see is that even as you walk down the streets of San Francisco, you're going to see interactive ads in the mainstream. You may just not realize it. And I have a few examples here which show like whether you're a pet lover, you're going to see this on a billboard, and you're like playing around and saying, how do I get to buy more pet food? Or it could be about how do you kind of put a face together. And I didn't quite get the correlation between the face and being hungry, but looks like it's working for McDonald's. It kind of drives a little bit more interactivity versus just watching a burger, the image of a burger over here. And then my favorite, this is like, see a billboard and like get some tap beer, right? Like who doesn't like beer? So these are like just ways of showing you like how, whether it's brands or, other kind of uh, industries, they're all kind of gravitating towards making ads more interactive and more fun. So then the question we asked ourselves, given our history of gaming and our understanding of the gaming ecosystem, how can we bring that to mobile ads for games? And so then let's show you an example of what a playable ad looks like. And so this is an example of Bubble Island 2, which is a casual game. And what you'll see is that it shows up in an interstitial format. So, but now when you tap to play, you can actually like start to like play and you get immersed in the game. And as you can see, slowly but surely we draw the user into the game, and like they're immersing themselves, they're trying it out, and as they get to like it, right, they can like get an opportunity to install it. They'll go to the app store and then follow the regular cycle of installing it. Right? And so what we are finding is that these ads, they're built very lightweight. They're built on HTML5 technology. They utilize JavaScript. They tend to be much more compact compared to a video ad, but much more richer compared to like static ads, right? And so we see that kind of conversion as well. And so let's show you some examples, because it's not just about casual games. What Chartboost has done, it's been the last few months we've been hard at work building games across a wide portfolio of genres and categories. So it works whether you're an intellectual who's more about the word games. Yes, we have an example of that. If you're a gambling addict and you really love those casino slots, we have a playable for that. If you like the match three, and like, if you've been on a BART ride and you like look over people's shoulders, every one out of two people I see is playing a match three game, right? And they're completely immersed in it. So we have an example of that as well. And then there are some who like want to play like hidden objects or mystery games. And we built some like for Pearl Sparrow, we built some playable. So it just shows you there's a lot of diversity in how we look at playable ads, and we've done that across the industry, right? So then the question you might ask yourself, hey, is there evidence to show that these ads are much more effective? And we do, right? So what we see is that these playable ads are a win-win-win for the advertisers, for the publishers, and for the users. On an average, we see for advertisers, there's a 123% increased conversion, because what we see is that while users may not click on it so much, but once they start to play and interact with it, there's a much higher install rate. And that leads to a higher conversion, right? Similarly, when we look at retention, which is what the users care about more, we did some studies and we saw that it led to actually a 27% increase in retention as measured by D7 returners. So what is the impact of these higher increased rates or higher bids? It has an immediate impact on CPM for publishers. So what we see is that it drove a 2x increase to publishers as they kind of get more money for the same 1,000 impressions that they're generating, right? At the same time, we asked ourselves, like, what is happening to the player experience, right? And what we see is that players, of course, find these ads much more engaging. And then when we looked at the retention experience for publishers, we see that there was a marginal improvement of 42% compared to 41% when you compare playable ads retention to like users who looked at a static ad. So across the board, right, we have not seen any negative experience. We've only seen it enrich the experience for the entire gaming ecosystem. So with that, the question that you would ask yourself is that, okay, there's good evidence, but what is it about Chartboost? We've seen playable ads and a lot of other players in the industry. And what we believe is that we've been a lot more thoughtful about observing not only the early stages of playable ads where there was like a lot of streaming ads or crashing, but we said, hey, let's pick the best technology. Let's look at HTML5. Let's make sure that we're utilizing the best JavaScript technology that we have and the methods we have to build these HTML5 ads, and utilize the WebView technology, which we have pushed through our SDK to get a wider adoption among publishers, which allows us to utilize the native browser controls that are offered by iOS or by Android and package it all together. But where the real differentiator is also a targeting and a unique access to a billion plus mobile gaming audiences, which allow us to really understand which person is going to like a casino game versus a hidden object game versus a match three game, and show the right ad to the right user at the right time, right? So that entire value proposition of having a richer UX packaged well, driven by a tight technology cycle, has allowed us to really kind of make a lot of inroads with playable ads, and it's a win for advertisers, publishers, and the users. So with that, what I would like to do next is talk a little bit about myth busting, right? There are a number of myths in this industry about, are playables really good for us, good for the advertisers? So I'd like to establish a few myths, or I'd like to at least bust a few of these myths. So myth number one, right? I'm sure you've all seen like Machine Zone playable ads all over the place, and they're pretty good, right? But the reality is, it's Machine Zone is not the only playable ad that you see. What we see is that it works not just for action games or strategy games, but it works across a wide variety of genres. So whether it's slots, match three, trivia, hidden objects, simulation, we have data which shows that we are now running these across 50 plus advertisers across 10 different genres, and it's working well across all of these. Similarly, it doesn't work just for games, but it also works well for non-gaming advertisers. So we see an example of Wishbone, where you have like this example of, would you rather be doing X or Y? And because the user can immediately touch and like provide a response, they get instant, like, it's a little bit of an instant gratification. You get feedback on how the ad is performing or what's happening here, right? Similarly, myth number two is that as a publisher, and we saw some of this when we talked to some publishers, is that it could increase churn on my games. I was at Casual Connect a few weeks ago in Berlin, and I kind of saw that being mentioned. And the reality is that it doesn't. It actually has either the same or marginally better experience, because 42% of users who saw a playable ad returned back within 7 days compared to 41% for static, right? Similarly, myth number three, right, is that playables will crash my game. And the technology has evolved, experience has evolved, where what we see is these playable ads have a payload which is between 250 kilobytes to 1 megabyte on an average. And it's one-fourth the size of a video. So it loads up faster, especially like emerging markets where we kind of tend to have that lag, right? And so playable ads provide a much better experience, and we've not seen any experience of them crashing. So with that, hopefully, this gives you a good sense of where the industry is headed, how Chartboost experience has been with playable ads. And with that, what I'd like to do is call upon Prashant, my colleague, who's been leading the product efforts on playables, and he'll give you some case studies and some more data points.
Thank you, Deepak. When Deepak first showed me these slides, I learned a lot as well, and I hope it was the same for you guys. So definitely another round of applause for Deepak for sharing the data. So one of the myths that Deepak pointed out too is, right, that are users happy with looking at playable ads? And this is something I've thought about a lot on the product team here at Chartboost. I'm used to seeing images, I'm used to seeing videos, and then occasionally I see this ad that I'm not quite sure what it's about. There's a house and there's a hand, and I'm like, that looks good, but what do you want me to do with it, right? And I think we're at a stage where users are just getting used to playable ads. Our view is that it'll take about 6 months more by the time they're like totally mainstream, and everyone's expecting playable ads at that point. But till then, I think it's on all of us who are building playable ads to make sure we are easing them into that experience and making sure we're not putting them off to playable and interactive ads. And we did a bunch of testing around this, and we wanted to share some of those best practices with you guys. If for some of you who are going to build these ads yourself or are considering running these ads in networks. And I'll start by talking about some of our very early tests. A real quick story for you. So we made this really awesome ad. We spent a lot of effort and time in the design. We put a beautiful logo and we branded it, calling it a mini challenge. Do 10 matches in 15 seconds, tap to start and all of that. And we thought this will do fantastically well, right? So we went ahead, launched it. And to our disappointment, we saw a play rate of 9%. So only 9% of people who saw this ad even bothered to play it. That was a big setback. And I remember I went to Deepak and I was like, you know what, no one's playing, this is a mess. And Deepak was like, no, go back and think about it and why it happened. And we did that. We first looked at what the challenge is. The users are not playing the mini game, all right. And that's resulting in low conversion because our whole hypothesis banks on the fact that the user will play and therefore like the game, right? And then install it. But if they're not playing it, they're not going to install it. And we were seeing that. What could be causing that? That was our hypothesis, is they were not sure it's an interactive ad or that it's something they can play because they're used to seeing these images and videos and there's no reason for them to think this is any different. So maybe they're thinking it's an animated ad, like an animated GIF, and so they're leaving it alone or closing it. We can test it. We have data to figure out if this is the case or not. So we did that. And the solution we came up with is let's instruct users really clearly that this is an ad that they can interact with. Show some animations, to make it extra clear. And then we went and launched that test. We actually did two variations. So on the left, you see the first ad that we launched, and on the right, you see the two variations. So we did away with a lot of the useless text that we had come up with originally. In the second variation, we put the game front and center. We don't care if there's no button that the user can click. Our main goal is to get them to play the ad. And then if they like it, they will click it themselves. Let's not force them. Once the test ran, we saw the play rates jump. So 40% on the design on the left and 72% on the design on the right. Uh, this was up from 9% that I'd shown you in the previous slide, right? So a lot more people were actually playing the ad now. And if we remember, the hypothesis I presented was that if a user plays the ad and likes it, they will install. And we saw that too. If you look at the CPM increases, it was 79% on the left and 140% on the right. And that is something we see consistently. The more people play the ad, the more likely they are to install it. So we've been laser focused on getting the play rates up and getting as many people as possible to interact with the ad. And we've run dozens of such tests. This is just one example that I'm showing you here. We've done this across all those genres that Deepak had presented earlier. I thought I'll show you some of the metrics that we track, and maybe this will be useful for you as well when you design similar ads. Okay, there you go. We look at the funnel broadly in this fashion. Play rate is number one. I keep coming back to that because I care about that a lot. You have to get the user to play the ad. That's the only reason this format matters. Otherwise, it's as good as a banner ad or a static ad. Then we go on to install rate. All right, they've played the game. Do they then go ahead and install the app? How many installs per 1,000 impressions? So the reason that's important is how many people have seen it, and then eventually how many people have installed it, right? So that determines your CPM. That is why that's an important metric. And then we don't stop there. As a network, we get paid the minute there's an install, but really a long-term goal is to provide quality installs. That's the only reason advertisers stay with us. So we also measure D1 retention of the installs that we're delivering. And we compared that with static ads, and these numbers are very, they're averages. You see a big variation across different games. But the thing that we see consistently is that playables do better, which is why the three of us are here talking about it today. I left out one metric out of this slide on purpose, which is click-through rate. That is something advertisers talk about all the time. Like, what's the CTR? You look at search advertising, CTR is a big deal. Our view is that the clicks matter, but really what matters is the install eventually. There's 100 ways in which you can get users to click the ad. You could hide the close button, you could delay it by a few seconds, you could do all those tricks, but in the end, you don't get quality installs. So while we do measure it, it's not one of the metrics that we think too deeply about. What we care more about is the install rate, the installs per 1,000 impressions, and the D1 retention in the end. So we've done, like I said, we have looked at these metrics across games. We see a variety of results. Almost always we see that playables are doing better. But just to give you additional proof, right? So we asked a few of our customers who are really happy with these ad formats to share a word. Here you see a slots game by Product Madness, which saw a 70% increase in conversion. And you can see from the code that they agree with our philosophy, which is make the ad fun for the user and you will get the installs and you will get the quality. Similarly with Bubble Island, this was a surprise to us as well. We were not expecting a 500% increase in conversion. And obviously, we don't see that with literally every playable we build, but there's a reason I chose this to put it on the slide because it just looks so good and makes us look good. And yeah, you can see the quote again from the UA manager at Wooga. They were really happy with this. And like Deepak mentioned, all those iPads over there have a lot of the other playables that we have built, and they will, most of them have seen similar metrics increases, so you can give it a shot and see what they look like. So that actually brings to a conclusion the tests and the metrics that we want to share with you. But we packaged all this neatly into a design philosophy. And when I say we, I really mean my colleague Jason, who's going to come here and talk to you about the design philosophy behind Playable Ads. Jason, all yours.
Thanks, Prashant. And you can see from Prashant's story that Playable Ads wasn't a unified success right out of the gate. But what we did is we stuck to it. We evaluated the data that was coming in about user retention and engagement, and then allowed that to inform the design that we use moving forward. There we go. So right out of the bat, we now design the ads as if they were mini games with all of the game philosophies that you would use in designing a game. So it's a game first, but never losing sight that it's also an ad. And the goal is to get the player to click on the install button, right? So all of the design choices that we make revolve around that. So we have to identify the core gameplay loop. Now, the core gameplay loop is the specified actions that you engage with over a period of time. Now, take for example the world's favorite plumber. Okay, so what do we do in that game? We run, we jump, we grab power ups, stomp on baddies, and then touch the top of the flagpole at the very end. Now, imagine if you took that entire level and condense it down to 15 or 30 seconds. What are the essential core gameplay actions at that time? Running and jumping. That defines everything that you do in the level, and that's the sort of design direction that we move into whenever we're designing a playable ad. We cut out all the excess, we focus in on the core gameplay elements, and elaborate from there. Then we motivate the player. So this is really key. We have to encourage them to engage with the game. We have to showcase anything from a score, combo multiplier, any sort of effects that make it a lively experience. And then also we have to showcase the personality of the game. Frequently, games can fit into very neat categories. You've got match 3 games, you've got hidden object games, but we have to approach the design in a way where we're really showcasing what that game does best and showcase the personality of it. So for example, that's me. Here we go. Let's start with a cooking game. Now, we're taking it from a new player perspective. They don't know anything about cooking games. We just have to assume that. So what did we do? We showcased the personality of the downloadable game by putting some of the character art there. Also, we encourage the player to play without installing. It's a low overhead of engagement, right? All you have to do is play it. You don't have to install a game to play our game. And then, since the background of the design of the diner is really busy, we decided to put sort of like a black overlay and then a highlight around the one point where they're supposed to start their engagement. Tap to try. Now we have a tutorial phase where we're just defining the core gameplay loop, okay? So in the actual downloadable game, we had multiple customers. So just to sort of walk through all of the elements that we have here in the loop, customers come in, they have an order, you prep ingredients, you serve them the finished products, like the burgers and sodas, and then you collect their change, and then you do it all over again. So what we realized, though, is that we needed to cut out some of the elements just to sort of funnel things more smoothly. So instead of having 2 tutorial customers, we have one, and they have both orders. And also, instead of having to prep individual patties or buns, they're automatically there, and you're just waiting to swipe everything over. So we were focused in on the swiping actions, not the preparing actions. And after we've taught the player how to play the game, then they have about 15 to 30 seconds to actually play the game. Now we have 3 customers. They have a variety of orders there. And also, we're encouraging the player to serve them because they look really grumpy. And then once you serve them their order, they have a smile on their face. So, and then this is just, once they've actually understood the core gameplay loop, it's actually in play during this section of the game. And now we have the end card. So in the end card, we're encouraging the player to download the game because it is now an extension of the ad. They've already served some customers, and then now the line is hundreds of customers await. So it's just an extension of the experience. It's more of a continuation of what we've established in the playable ad. And there we go. And that's how the playable ads are made. So would you like to walk us through the rest of this?
Thanks, Jason. So I hope you got a really good kind of much more deep dive immersive experience of what it takes what are some of the best practices, and then Jason storyboarding through, and Prashant giving examples and data of, what was the before and after scenarios. So I learned a lot through that. No matter how many times they explain it, it's always, I learned something new from the entire experience. But just to kind of recap, whatever we learned today, right? I think one thing we started off with saying, look, the industry has evolved. Mobile gaming has come a long way with much more sophisticated UX and design, and ads have tracked accordingly. But there's one element that's been missing, which is the interactivity. And how do we make them fun and engaging, right? Because we've seen through data and UX that it drives higher retention, higher install rates. It's better for the overall lifetime value to deliver ads that make it much more engaging and interactive, right? We also talked about the Chartboost differentiation, the fact that we've had a rich, long history of working with game developers and kind of designing ads from interstitials to video and rewarded video. And now we really believe that playables, whether they converge into rewarded video locations or into static locations, they're here to stay and they have a long staying power. And we see that it works not just for gaming, but for non-gaming. And we see brands with billboards. So how do we take that whole experience and put it into into a handset, right? But still provide that gamification of that experience. And at the end of the day, we truly believe that we're at the very, very early stages of these interactive ads, right? And playables are just now starting their journey, and it's still in a very nascent phase. And I think it's going to be an exciting next few months, years to see where the industry goes, right, in keeping in line with consumer tastes and preferences, right? So we're really looking forward to this journey, and we really believe it's a win-win for the advertiser and the publishers. And at the end of the day, our mission and our values, like how do we we hard devs, how do we make our developers more successful? And we believe this is a very successful path to kind of get us there, right? So with that, I'd like to conclude and say, we do have the wall of iPads here. Please do go ahead and try out these playables. We're here, our team, which has been working very hard on playables. We've got Mylan, Minol, Jeff, Jason, Prashant, and a couple of others from Chartboost over here. We're all happy to explain how these work and answer any questions you might have. So thank you for taking the time to listen to us. We really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you very much. Are there any questions we can help answer?